So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to adjust the theme. Okay, so I'm just going to go to a page. Let's go, I think home page. We'll just use this home page. Okay, so what I did is I just middle mouse button clicked one of these links and opened up in a new tab. You can also just right click and open a new tab. But that way we can see something here. Okay, so I'm gonna on the original one. So I have just two of the same thing twice. I'm gonna click here to go back to the dashboard. That way, when I make my changes, I can see them here. That's why I'm having the two tabs. Okay, so in here you can go to appearance, and then you'll see theme file editor. Now this will exist in no matter what theme you're using. So some themes will have, such as the Elementor, they'll have like a theme builder or something like that. But that's a little bit different. I think it's called theme. Oh no, sorry, it would be Astra. Sometimes they'll have like a builder thing, and those are cool and everything. However, right here's the theme builders and the templates. But the problem is with those is that they are still kind of front end. They're not actually getting into the nitty gritty. So I just wanted to show you what this is, and then you can kind of, you can use it for what you want. So inside the theme, once you go to theme and theme file editor, it'll only show the current. I mean, you can switch to the other ones, but it's going to show by default the current selected one. And you'll see basically the code here. So it has its own little text editor here. And then you can see basically how the theme is written. So if you're interested in any of these things, you can see it here, right? So a lot of it's using PHP to write basically HTML. And then there's also CSS style sheets included as well, right? So more or less what's included is that there's now PHP on top of the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All right. So by default, most of the time what you're going to do is go to your style sheet. And then in here, you could add your own custom CSS. You would just write the same way you normally do, like body, and then color, and then like red, something like that. Okay. That's typically how it's going to work. So you just write it like you write any other style sheet. Now, if I update this file, it'll say file saved successfully. Just be aware too, sometimes this takes forever to the point where it doesn't even work. Now, if I go in here and I refresh, you're going to see, oh, it didn't work. So this one's a little bit different. So basically, it actually, there's a reason why I even know this, is it goes, no, the CSS files are loaded from assets CSS folder, right? So you can see there's a bunch of notes basically telling where it has these, it's all commented, but it has all these notes saying all the different technologies and people and stuff involved in it. But then there's this nice note here that says the CSS files are loaded to the assets CSS folder. So if we look at here, you'll see here's the assets folder, then CSS, and then it says minified. I don't think I've talked about minified. Basically what minified means is that instead of running it the way that we have been writing things, it writes it as it compresses it. I'll show you in a second when we go through these. So I actually went through and I was trying to figure out which one would be. Like, it's a style sheet .min CSS or style.min CSS. And what I found is that none of these actually work. The one that worked when I added the CSS was the main min.css. And again, that's just for this specific one. Did I make changes? Oh, yeah, we'll just leave it. Who cares if that's there? It's not going to work anyway. Okay. So when it's minified, you might be like, well, this is weird. So basically what it does is if you see, it's got a class name and then it's got the CSS rule. It's got the selectors here. So it's the same thing that we write, but it's minified, which means that they don't like hit enter or put spaces. It's not meant to be read easily. In fact, they don't want it to be, because this is much harder if I wanted to try and steal it. It also reads quicker because there's less characters for the interpreter, the browser, to have to read. So that's what minified means, that they just basically compress it in essence. Okay. Now we're going to do is just scroll all the way down, and we want to just at the end of this, we would add our own code. Okay. So again, I'll just do body, and we'll do, let's do background color, background hyphen color, and I'm just going to say blue. Okay. So, and then we'll update file. All right. And then I'll go here and I'll refresh. And you'll see, hey, it didn't work. So much like Bootstrap, you're going to constantly be having to try and compete with the CSS that's already in here. And so if you write something really generic like body, you're not going to get it. If I write an H1, it's not going to override, because each one of these things, they have a bunch of different classes and IDs attached to them that are more specific than what we're putting in here. Okay, so we cannot just write body background color blue. It will not work. Okay, so instead, what we're going to do is this. Oh, one thing also I want to mention too. If possible, you don't want to do it in here anyway. You could just, in the customize, right? Customize will probably have things that I can do, like global and then colors, and then I can choose the background color right here, right? So the only reason why you would want to use this is that there's something that you want to implement that's not a possibility, like it's not already built into the thing. So for example, I'm going to use this one as an example. Let's say I wanted the background of this part to be blue. That's not something that's an option, right? I can't put that in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it through custom CSS. So I'm just going to close out of this. All right. So I need to grab this part. You can do it a couple different ways. Just so you're aware, if you click over here, now I'm inside of, what do you call it? Chrome. It'll be a little bit different depending on whether you're in like Mozilla or another one. I would just suggest Chrome. I'm going to click here. And then if you go to more tools, you'll see developer tools. And when you click on that, it's going to show you basically the code. So I can see here's the elements, right? Here's the styles. They have the console. And as I hover over things, you'll see it'll hover over them as well. Okay. Now I'm just going to exit out of that. Another way of doing it is if you just right click over an element, you can go to inspect, and bam, it's going to go and it's going to show you where that element is. Okay. So it'll do the same thing, but I just want you to be aware that you can see the code that is making each one of these. And when you have an element selected, it shows you the CSS on this side as being applied to it. So notice, look at all these rules CSS that's being applied to that specific element. Okay. Now, what I wanted to do was not just this. I want to do both of them. So I'm just going to hover up until I get both items. So we'll say, let's go with just this one. So I'm going to say I want to grab this. So I could look at it and be okay, what are the class names, right? But that'll be kind of hard, and then I got to like look at it and what have you. I can also look at the various CSS rules that are being applied to it. But what you could also do is if you right click over top of it, you can go to copy, and then I can copy the selector. So I'm going to go to copy selector. Then I'm going to go back to my theme. And then instead of body here, I'm going to put in this big long thing. And then we'll go ahead and we're going to update the file. Then I'll go back here and I'll hit refresh. And voila, the background is blue. Okay. Now, what you want to do afterwards is go to the other pages and make sure it's still working. Okay, good. Because you might find that this is too specific. So a lot of times what I'll end up doing is I will go through, and because you can see how it's like going inside the div, inside the div, inside the div, and then in this and this and that. I'll go through and just remove like this header part and then remove that. So I can make it a little, I like, it's a good idea to make it as broad as possible while being specific enough that it does work. In this case, I'm just going to leave it as it is because I don't feel like putting a whole ton of effort into that. Let's also do this. Let's do padding because it's right up against the thing. So I'm going to just do 10 pixels, we'll say, and we'll update the file. See how it's kind of tight right there, and then hopefully when I refresh, yeah, see how it gives me a little more room. I just didn't like the way that was. This looks terrible, and I don't like it, but I just want you to know how to do it, okay? So you can see all of these files here, and again, this is the wrong way to do it. I'm showing you how to do it because I really want to just show you all the files that are made in it. And if you decide to take Web Design 2, we actually go through, we do not make something this robust, but we'll make like the theme header, the theme footer. We'll make the functions.php. We will build from scratch a theme. Okay, won't be a great theme, but it'll have the bare bones that you can kind of build from. Okay, so but this is the wrong way to do it because what will happen is as soon as I update this, which you have to update constantly, it's just going to overwrite what you have here. Okay, so I don't suggest doing it this way right from the get-go, even though I just did. All right, a better way of doing it would be through the customize. Okay. There are reasons why I don't like customize either, but the better way of doing it is through there. So I'm going to go back to the front end here. Let's go and trying to think of something else that, let's say I specifically want this head, right? So I'm going to go to one element that's kind of specific. I'm going to go here. I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to go inspect. Okay. So that's this element. I want to grab that element specifically. I'm going to right click, go to copy, and we're going to copy selector. Okay. Now I'm going to close out of this, and then you're going to go to customize. And then on the bottom, you'll see additional CSS. You open that up, and then here is where you can write that. Okay. So I'm going to click on this. We're going to paste, and then we'll do like we normally do. And then I will type in, color red. Okay. And now you'll see it is specifically grabbing that one. All right. Now you might be like, oh, I don't want to grab just that one. I want to grab, more of them, or I want this whole row. What you'd have to do is, again, I'm just going to inspect the element. And then if you just go up broad enough, right? So we'll just go up to, okay, so that's that whole area. Okay, so that's that whole row. So you'd want to apply it to this one. And then you would, do the copy selector, and then you would just replace that with that instead. And you can see it doesn't look like it's specific enough. So you might have to, hang on a second. What was it before? An H3. So you might have to do a little bit more with that. Publish. There it is. Yeah. So anyway, you're still going to have to concern yourself with fighting with what the elements are. If I try to just do an H3, it's probably not going to work. But again, if you're like, oh, I want to have this whole row be a certain color, you might be able to just do it with the regular customize. The only real reason to use this additional CSS is if you're specifically trying to grab like this thing on this specific page. I want this guy to be a certain color so that it stands out. Okay. Most of the time, usually want to keep things unified and have the same sort of style all the way through. So typically your customize, depending on the robustness of the theme, should be enough in order for you to, produce what you're after. Okay. So those are kind of the two ways. Just be aware too, when I do it on one page, you can see right here. Let's see. It doesn't really say. Sometimes it'll say like page 3 or something, which means it's only going to work on this page. I already published, right? So we have another page. You can see it is working on this one. So it's, but there's a chance that it would not work on another page. So just be aware it's even likely. And if you didn't want to work on this page, then you're probably gonna have to put in like, dot page, whatever this page number is, and so on and so forth. This is sort of if you got to, force what you want done, you would do it this way. Okay. Out of the two, this is probably the best way to do it, is to go through and do it this way, as opposed to actually adjusting the theme, because you're going to find that there's just going to be mistakes and such. So just play around with it. I don't really care what you adjust or how you adjust it. Just try to put something into the theme and try to put something into this customize.